are so excited to have another chance to reduce the stigma for all things mental health in May. And so perfect timing to have you, Dr. Blake Jones, on to join us to talk about what you do here in Woodford County and what brought you here, kind of your road to here, and then just mental health in general, like what you're seeing, things like that. You know, you still run into people that are really hesitant to talk about it, and they see it as two different things when it's just as much of your physical health, you know. And so maybe just start, if you would just start telling us about, I guess, what you see the state of mental health as it is right now, maybe compared to where it was like 10 years ago. Are we getting better with being able to talk about our feelings and our emotions and going to therapy and therapeutics, those types of things?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it, and I love the chance to just kind of talk about this topic. I'm very invested in it. You know, I've had my own mental health struggles earlier on in my as a young man, and you know, going to therapy, and even now I go and see a therapist every once in a while just to check in, because you know, being a therapist is a very kind of isolating thing, and it's lonely sometimes. And so I love going to see my therapist. He's a guy about my age, and I just love him. I'm going to see him next week, and I think that's such a healthy, positive thing. And I want counseling and therapy and just mental health in general to be seen as a positive way of taking care of your health. You know, we go to the gym, we go to the doctor, you know, you guys are wonderful about, you know, vaccines and all that. And I just want, you know, taking care of our mental health to be like that. And so that, you know, that we'll talk about this in a minute, but my work with responders, that's first responders, that's kind of the message that I want to give them is that prevention piece. And I know that you guys do a lot of that as well. You asked me about mental health. Are we becoming more able to talk about it? I would say yes, which is a very good thing. You know, children even, you know, I've got a 11-year-old son, and he, you know, we talk with him about, you know, acknowledging his emotions, and I think that's so important, especially for boys and men, to grow up knowing that they can have more emotions than just anger, right? That's super important.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I love, you know, just talking with him about that and sort of trying to model that with him and my other sons in their lives. But yeah, we've become very open about mental health discussions. There's a bit of a caveat there. I think, you know, the internet, social media, those kinds of things have, in some ways, they've not been super helpful, because people can, especially young people, can get on there and they read all this stuff and, you know, I have all of those things and I'm this and I'm that. And sometimes maybe they are, but sometimes they're not. And so when I have conversations with people, I always talk about, you know, you're more than a label. You're so much more. You're a person with all of these different things. Yes, you have some symptoms of this or that, but you're more than that label. And so that's how I treat people.
I love that. And I love that you yourself, you're going just to check in. And I think that's important that we normalize going to a therapist when things are good, bad, ugly, all the things. I just recently, I say recently, it feels like yesterday, I lost my mom about 1.5 years ago. And during that time, I utilized like bereavement therapy, which was so good. And I didn't know that it existed. And so I think it's really important that people know that there are so many types of therapists. And, while I think that there may be a shortage in some ways, it's really important to kind of keep going until you find what you need in a therapist.
Yes.
And that's what I've done with my kids. We have 5 kids. 3 of them are already in therapy, really proactively.
Good.
And part of it was, okay, we're having these big emotions. Let's learn how to deal with them. Some things are, becoming overwhelming, and there are ways to kind of reshape your thinking around that. But it was very important that I certainly didn't want them to go once and say, oh, this wasn't a good fit. But we really made it a point to make sure they were comfortable. Yeah. Now we utilize the therapies at school. There are excellent counselors and therapists within the public school system. And so we definitely tap into that as well. I don't think you can have too much help when it comes to that. But I wondered if you think, that's a really big part of feeling comfortable with who you're with, and, kind of not giving up until you find somebody that is good for you to talk to, and not just when things are tough. Really checking in all the time. And
you're making such a great point here. And I was a professor at UK for a long time, and one of the things I talked with most of my students wanted to be clinical social workers and therapists and things. And one of the things I talked with them about is the research is very, very clear about this, that the relationship, the rapport with a therapist is much more important than kind of the modality that they use. So, there's cognitive behavioral therapy, there's dialectical, there's EMDR, there's all these, last time I checked, there's something like 400 different types of recognized psychotherapy in the literature. But the very most important thing is that you feel comfortable, that you feel heard and listened to. Certainly that the therapist is competent to talk with you. I call my folks that I see, I call them clients. I don't call them patients because I don't want to pathologize them. Some therapists call them patients, and that's fine. But they're my clients. They're people that I care about, and I want them to feel heard. Now, that doesn't mean that I just don't, kind of gently confront people sometimes. I always tell people, if you come in my office, especially the cops that I work with, I'm like, if there's no place else you can go in this world and have someone speak truth to you, you're going to come in my office and I'm going to speak truth to you. And most of them really like that. And I just call them out on some things, just like my therapist calls me out on some things. And I love that. He sees blind spots in me. So anyone that's listening to this and they're considering counseling, do your homework for sure. There's a website called psychologytoday.com. We all therapists, or most of us, have kind of bios on that page. You can read about us. Some of us have little videos, but find, if you get to somebody and you can't, they don't really connect or click with you, don't give up.
Right.
Keep going and keep trying to find that person that you can connect with.
So important. So important.
Yeah.
Well, would you mind sharing your road into really to where you are now? What got you here? People usually that are in service like this, we have a story.
Yeah.
And if you wouldn't mind sharing just some pieces of that, we would love to hear about the road that led you here.
Sure. Well, we recently celebrated Mother's Day, and all roads to anything good that I've ever done in my life lead to my mom.
Yes.
And I really mean that. I love her with all my heart. She's my North Star in my life. So I grew up in a family of 8, have 5 brothers and sisters. My dad was a traveling preacher, so he was gone a lot. He was an evangelist, so he would go around and do like tent revivals and that kind of stuff. And sometimes we traveled with him. We all play music, and so we were sort of the Jones family band, and I
Yes.
played banjo and guitar and stuff. But a lot of times he was just gone for weeks at a time. And so we were very poor growing up. We grew up on my grandpa's farm. We had a garden, we had enough to eat, but we were very poor. We lived in an old farmhouse from the 1800s. And I just remember my mom, their faith is very strong for them. It's the center of their life, their Christian faith. And after church on Sundays, she would always say, it's time to go to the nursing home. And what she meant by that was that after we ate dinner, whatever was prepared for us, we would all grab our instruments and we would go to the nursing home and sing for the people there and play our instruments for them. I remember as a very young child singing and then playing my guitar. And it wasn't really something that she asked if we wanted to do. She just said, this is what our family is about. We serve other people. That's what we do. And so even now, my mom is 87 years old, and every once in a while I'll get a handwritten letter from her, or my wife Lori will, or my kids will get handwritten birthday cards of encouragement from her at 87. She can barely see, but she still serves people. She serves her neighbors, she serves at her church, and her life is just built around serving others and God and her family. Those are the things that she loves. And so, I was first generation college student. I somehow found my way down to Berea College, and it just really changed the whole trajectory of my life. I still don't know how I got there, but I'm so thankful for Berea. And, I was able to really, this whole ethic of service, I was just able to play out there in college. And then I just found social work and fell in love with it. And then I found mental health social work, loved that. And so I've been a clinical social worker since 1998. And I just, again, it all leads back to her, though. And in my own family, and Lori's in my family, we're trying to teach our kids that. So we go to the home place in Midway every month, and we sing for the people there. And, I want my children to see us doing that, just like I saw my mom doing that. So that's how I got to be a therapist, is through her.
Well, what a great teacher you had.
Yeah.
And I'm still kind of misty-eyed over that. And then keeping the tradition alive with your own family, using all of the many talents that you all have. That's incredible. But you work, too, with a very special population. And it's actually one that I learned about, not necessarily, I learned about the proactive treatments and things available for people that are first responders during COVID. Because a lot of us that were in public service or in the government role during COVID, that was a really difficult time for us, and it extended over so many years. So, there wasn't a finite date that it ended. That's actually when my mental health crashed. Just kind of my story.
Yeah.
The middle of the pandemic, I start having major issues with my colon, and it landed me in the hospital. And they couldn't find any reason, anatomically, physiologically, that it was happening other than the stress that I had in my life. And so, believe me when I tell you that, not you, because I know you already know this, but any of our listeners, your mental health and stress can make you physically ill.
Yes.
And it absolutely did me. And it's happened since then. Just that is what my body does. That's where my stress goes, is to my stomach. And I finally started taking medicine. I'd never taken any kind of medicine to help with my mental health, which was so crazy because I know enough about mental health. And, I take Tylenol when I have a headache. Why was I not taking anything when literally the part of my health that touches absolutely everything was suffering more than it ever had? And so that was kind of like my rude awakening. Like, if you don't take care of all the things top to bottom, you're going to pay for it, because the colon can only stand, so much stress.
Sure.
And everybody's different. For some people, you could develop a skin issue because of stress. But that's when my journey with addressing my mental health began, and I don't regret it. I'm so thankful for it. And so getting back to, with you and your specialty being with first responders, I'm so interested to learn more about that.
Yeah. What you said about taking care of your body and your health and your mental health and all that is so important. And one of the things I say to my clients is, if you don't take time to be well, your body will take time to be sick, and it'll just shut down on you. And so, taking time off and taking vacation time and having a lunch where you close your door and put your phone and your computer away and, eat in a mindful way, all that's super important. So the first responder, my work with first responders has been such a blessing in my life. And again, I trace it back, in my life, I'm almost 60, and I think about the different people. So my mom certainly was a foundational person, but then there was another person, a friend of mine named Ron Wyatt. And Ron was a Versailles police officer 25 years ago here in Woodford County. And he and I went to church together. I love Ron. I still count him as just one of my closest friends. And we were just having this conversation. I think somebody in his unit or something was struggling with their mental health. And he said, "Who can I send this person to?" And I said, "Well, I could try to work with them, but I don't really have any specialized training with first responders." And I was sort of afraid, actually, to, because I thought they would all be sort of macho jerks, and I'm kind of a, back then especially, I was sort of a young therapist, sensitive, and it's like, I don't want to work with these guys. They, I just don't have the patience. But he said, he prompted me. He said, "You need to be trained. You need to be trained in working with first responders. We need you, and we need more counselors like you." And so I did, and I just started doing ride-alongs with the Lexington Police Department. I knew somebody there, and I said, "Hey, can I go do a ride-along?" And so, 30 or 35 ride-alongs later, I'm still doing those. I love doing ride-alongs because they really opened my eyes to what police officers especially go through, but really all first responders. There's a lot of, with cops especially, there's a lot of sort of boredom. There's a lot of driving around, but they still have to be hyper vigilant, which is exhausting to the body.
Yes.
And then they could be called to some suicidal person or a bad car wreck or something like that, and they have to, they have to respond to that. And so, what I've found with them is that often they come home, they're emotionally exhausted. They've just been really driving around a lot, but that hypervigilance makes them exhausted. And they're traumatized by the stuff that they see. All first responders, the stories that I've heard in my practice are absolutely just heartbreaking. That some of them have affected me, and I sort of have to be aware that I don't become traumatized too. But I just started doing ride-alongs. And then they started asking me to do trainings at the Lexington Police Department. Ron invited me to the Franklin County Sheriff's Office, and I'm still working with them today doing these wellness visits, these sort of preventative annual wellness visits with me. And did some research at UK around first responders and some consulting and things. And I found that I just love working with them, because if they get that taking care of their mental health is not a weakness, it's a very strong thing for them to do, then that's a beautiful thing for me to see. And there's this ripple effect throughout their agency, and especially it starts with the people at the top, the command staff and the administrators. I'll just point to Sheriff Depp in Franklin County. He's supports these annual wellness visits, and we have a contract with him and everything. And he's one of the first ones to sign up every year to come see me. So everybody from the sheriff of Franklin County down to the newest hire in Franklin County and civilian staff, they all come and see me once a year.
That's great.
And I talk with them about not just mental health, but sleep and relationships and stress and food, money. All these things to me are part of wellness. So it's a very holistic approach, and it's not as scary, for me to call it a wellness thing. Like I'm not going to call it, well, you have to go see the therapist once a year, and he's going to, he's going to emotionally tear you down and get your darkest secrets. They would never show up for that. But in Franklin County especially, I just love those guys and ladies. I love them, and I feel like they're part of my family, and I'm part of theirs. And they call me. They call me if things are going on, and they come see me. Yeah.
I love that. Mm-hmm. So they feel so comfortable that now, it's both proactive and reactive.
Yeah.
But you're exactly right. It does start, and I love that you said command staffed, because I'm thinking of like the incident command structure. Mm-hmm. If your leadership, if that team doesn't, make it, normalize it, that your staff are going to function better and serve better if you serve them first and make sure that they're taken care of in all ways. That's so very important. And I can't help but draw on a lot of similarities. While what we do here is not anywhere near as combative or, anything like that of a first responders, we are first responders to communicable diseases. Mm-hmm. And so when those notifications come in, there's actually over 100. And so when those notifications come in, it does now, for me, and some of the staff that were here during COVID, it's like a physical reaction. And actually, for a while, we had a fax machine that made these weird noises. And when I would hear those noises, it was just this, I felt like my brain was kind of being shocked, because I'm like, really the only things that come through that particular line are communicable disease results.
Yeah. So that's a trauma response that you had to just that sound.
Absolutely.
Your brain equated that with, oh no, something bad is getting ready to happen. Yeah.
And we have one of the best regional epidemiologists in the state. Mm-hmm. She's been around so many years, and she's helped us through so many outbreaks or clusters. But when her number or name shows up on my phone, it is also a response, because she's calling because something is on her radar. And these types of things are usually Friday, and
right.
You're not really ever calling anybody that wants to hear the news that you're going to give them.
Yeah.
And then the people that could have been exposed, they're not happy to know that either. And then if they have to do any kind of follow-up, whether it be to get a test or, a vaccine's recommended, it's usually not ideal scenario. And so there are a lot of connections that I'm drawing to what you do with first responders and kind of what we do here in public health. And that's just one small part of what we do. But it's certainly, when you when you work with that over time, and you've worked through COVID, we had a lot of more than 50% of the public health directors retired, either during or after COVID.
Yeah.
And so I can see why. If I had been able to retire, I would have. But I don't feel like my work here is done. And I'm like you, this is my passion. This is what I've done since day one. And I love it. I love the people. But, just bringing information to our community, collaborating with people like you, and talking about such important stuff like mental health, wellness, and especially for first responders that are, regularly exposed to things that can be traumatic. I mean, that's just such important work.
Yeah, it is. And, I don't know if we're going to talk about suicide, but I certainly want to mention that because that's sort of the worst outcome. It is the worst outcome, of course. And, the first responder community, especially police, have a suicide rate that's about 2.5 times that of the regular population. And so I worry about them. They have access to guns. They're mostly men. They tend to drink a lot, some of them, and they're not afraid of death. And so all of that constellation of things makes them at risk. And so if they lose their family, or if they get fired, or if they're publicly embarrassed somehow, or as they're heading toward retirement and all they've been is a cop all those years and they have nothing else, they have no other persona other than that, I worry about them. And I've talked with several of them that I really worry about because they're alone. They're alone. They don't have their community that they built up all those years. They may drink a lot, and then they always, have weapons. And so I just think we need to talk about suicide nonstop, suicide prevention. And, people need to know that there's help, that they don't have to die alone like that, that there's help everywhere. There's one of my clients put it like this. He said, I was drowning, but there were lifeboats everywhere. They were everywhere around me, and I just didn't reach out to any of them. When he was suicidal, and thankfully he's doing great now, and he finally, reached out and got some help. But I want all people to do that. 988 is the suicide prevention number. The crisis text line is another 741-741. People can text about things, and that's on their mind. So, if I can keep one person alive, then my life has been worth it in this work with first responders. Or if I get them talking about it, or if they reach out to a colleague or friend and that person stays alive, then it's all worth it.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you brought that up because it needs to be mentioned. It needs to be talked about. I had not thought about, with police officers, that's you're right. They have all kinds of risk factors kind of built in to what they do already.
Yeah.
But if we could, I know this is not necessarily the age group that we've been talking about, but suicide comes up a lot in our teens, middle school, high school. And I feel like we see this more and hear about it more than we ever have. And what would be your words of wisdom for someone, a parent who may have a child that has mentioned that, suicide has crossed their mind, and there may be times where they feel like that's the only answer.
Yeah. I would say, first of all, take it seriously. Don't blow it off. Anytime I'm working with a parent, I want them to take those statements seriously. I also want them to have some connection with their child. Kids they're very lonely these days. They're more connected on their phones and, social media and all that than ever before, but they're very lonely.
Yes.
And they go on to social media to see how many people are following them, or this sense of how much they're liked is so important to them. But it's sort of this superficial, fleeting thing that we have to teach them. We have to teach them about connection with people that love them, and how to navigate things at school. You remember being a teenager. I do.
Yes.
And it was like, that thing that we sort of laugh about now, that was everything. That was our world, and so we don't want to kind of look down on that, but we want to give them the tools to navigate stuff, because I think being a teenager and a kid is harder than ever these days. I'm not anti-screen by any means, but I really believe strongly that parents need to moderate screen use with their kids and talk with them about it, just like they would any sort of drug, to be honest,
Yes.
or food or whatever. We're just connected all the time. And I see adults who are connected all the time. I mean, we're all sort of addicts to our phones.
Absolutely,
right?
Yes.
So, I'm not saying anything that I don't struggle with myself, but talk about suicide. I would also say that if you're a parent and your child is doing some sort of self-harming behavior, like cutting or something, sticking themselves with a pin or something like that, that's usually not a suicidal gesture. That's a cry for help, certainly, and they need help. But it's a way to feel some sort of being alive somehow. So people who are in pain who do that are often very emotionally numb, and so they cut themselves, and sometimes there's been abuse or other things, trauma, where they that's a factor there. But I've seen some parents sort of overreact. The kid has some cut or something on their arm, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, we got to take them to the hospital immediately. They're trying to kill themselves." I would encourage you to talk with a mental health professional as soon as you can, but don't overreact either. But don't underreact. Take it seriously and normalize the conversation. Talk with your kids about suicide and suicide prevention. We have a wonderful group here in Woodford County called Brothers Run, and with Angela Weiss, and I just love that woman. I have such great respect for her. She lost 2 sons to suicide, and they were friends with my sons in high school, and it just broke my heart. But what she's done with her pain in terms of suicide prevention should be a lesson to us all about how we take pain and turn it into good things. So I just want to give her a shout out and, encourage us to continue that conversation so we can save lives.
She's incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we've been involved with Brothers Run, and she just continues to do good things.
Mm-hmm.
I did want to mention something. I had a conversation with a local provider. It's been a few weeks ago, and they were talking about the potential need for urgent treatment, but mental health, addressing mental health. And I thought, what a wise, intuitive, that. I think that there's probably a need for that. Not maybe, I don't know what that looks like, because we are prevention and that's treatment. Mm-hmm. But, I've heard of Empath at UK, some of the places that you can go for, mental health emergencies. Mm-hmm. But maybe this could be more of a screening, like you said. Mm-hmm. Some people may not know what the signs are of a potential suicide risk, and the situation may be, it may be that they do need to go be assessed at the Ridge or, wherever. But it also could be, okay, these are just some signs of anxiety, depression. Why don't we get you hooked up with a therapist? I thought that was a really good idea. And so I hope that happens. I hope that eventually happens, because we don't have anything like that really.
Yeah.
And I think that it could be really another way to destigmatize, what we're seeing. Everybody I think would probably have to use it, parents anyway.
Yeah.
At one point or the other. But to speak to your point about screens, I was at a conference at the Ridge. It's been a couple months ago, and one of the speakers said, now we live in homes. Every kid has their own bedroom. So the kids come home, they go straight to their bedroom. And that leads to isolation. And then that leads to desperation. Because there are bots on our kids' phones telling them, you're fat, you're ugly, your shirt, is not cool. I mean, just this I didn't know that these things could happen. Even through like platforms that I thought that were safe. So I think you're right. We need, as parents, as community members, we need to be more educated on all of the risks that are literally at our fingertips.
Yeah.
And they're targeting our kids.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And they're intentionally addictive. I mean, like Roblox or I don't know, I don't play video games, but I think I have that right, Roblox or one of them. You intentionally have to keep winning to play it, and so that is baked into this kind of addictive nature of video games for kids. And so it is very difficult because kids, they do need to stay connected, with their parents, and they need electronic things to do schoolwork and things like that. But I think I don't want parents to give up. I mean, in our home, we have screen-free Sunday at our house, and everybody, puts all their screens away. And we go to church, but we also just, swim or go for walks, or just we read a lot and things like that. And the kids, at first they were resistant to that, but now it's like, oh, it's screen-free Sunday. Okay. And it's like, I've had them tell me, well, what a relief, that I don't have to like worry about like this thing popping up, or, this anxiety around their phone or whatever. And so I want parents to stay strong on that. And, sometimes I'm a little over the top probably with screen use. Lori would probably tell you that at our house, but I just see the addictive nature of it and the destruction. I work with lots of men who are addicted to pornography, and they're sex addicts and things. And, almost all of them, I say, where did you start that? Well, somebody gave me a phone when I was like 10, 11, 12, and or some other kid show me some things on the phone, and I just became addicted to pornography at that point. And now I'm losing my family. I'm got kicked out of my church, or whatever it is. And I just wish that parents could give kids good tools, just like we teach them about healthy eating. I know you guys talk about that around here, and prevention and exercise and all that. Let's teach them about healthy screen use as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've learned so much in this brief time with you, and I can't wait to share with the community what I've learned. I appreciate what you do. I'm proud of you. Keep doing what you're doing and continue to inspire us.
Thank you, Cassie. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining.